cursed room. Now, I say cursed room without knowing if it was truly cursed, but I will tell the story. And you can make that judgment for yourself. The year was 2004. My family and I had been looking for homes. If you check my other post out, you can read about the house for sale with the pool, the one we did not buy. But not long after that we found our future home. The neighborhood felt safe. The school was close, and it was just what we needed. Location, Hollywood, FL. The home was a 3BD, 1 bar. 2 of the rooms were situated toward the front left side of the house, and the master bedroom was situated towards the back right of the house near the kitchen. Just a little layout info. I'm having trouble adding a drawing. I did of the inside of the house, so I will put it in a separate post with a description. I would like to start this story with the former owners of the home. They were a family of 4, husband and wife in their mid-30s with 2 toddlers. When we first entered the home to talk to them about purchasing, we noticed 2 things. First, the house was extremely dark, even though it had a big window right in the front of the house. Second, the husband had been in a terrible accident, leaving him for a wheelchair and without work. The reason why they were selling the house in the first place. The couple slept in the master bedroom at the back of the home ***. This is key ***. We had a small conversation and agreed on purchasing the home. At this point I'm 7 years old and an only child. My mother's cousin had moved from Colombia and was living with us temporarily, so naturally he moved into the house with us. Since the bedrooms were close together, my parents decided we would take those rooms and we would send my cousin to the back of the house. I remember the back room radiating this infernal heat, because 2 of its walls were long window panes, good lighting but poor ventilation. Anyways, our cousin Duma lived with us for about 2 years in that home, but between struggling to make ends meet and being homesick he decided to return to Colombia to be with his family. 2006. As soon as he arrived, it had not even been a month, and he began to feel sharp pains in his stomach. So he went to the doctors, and it was stomach cancer. Duma passed away exactly 1 year later. When Duma left our home, the first cousin's husband Exner moved in with us. He and my father had started a little company together. So Exner decided to relocate from NYC to FL. He only lived with us for 7 months because he and my father had a couple of business disagreements, and ultimately it led to him leaving. 3 months into being back in NYC, he goes to the doctor due to some stomach pain. Diagnosis stomach cancer. Passed away exactly 1 year and 2 months later. My parents, being the superstitious people, they are freaked out at the coincidence of that and decided that no one else was to stay in that room. The room was turned into a workspace for my mother, and that was that. She ended up getting a herniated disc in that room one day that she bent down wrong. It's still an issue to this day. Again, could just be coincidence, but someone was always getting hurt in that room, leaving them with scars or worse. P.S. I'm 26F. And although this may not sound like a haunting right now, the next few parts of this story may as well tie it all in together, so do stay tuned for part 2 and 3. Alright Redditors, for this next part, one will be putting the cursed room on hold, but I will talk about what happened on the opposite side of the house in my parents' bedroom. And in mine. This is where it starts getting good for you guys, but traumatizing as hell for me. The question at hand, was it a guardian angel? Or was it something malicious and entirely different? Lol, I hate this story so much. It gives me the creeps to this day. Year was 2008. I was exactly 10 years of age when I went to Venezuela to visit an aunt that had been living there a majority of her life. I was traveling alone. Anyways, I made it back to the States at around 9 p.m. and my parents picked me up. When we got home, I was physically and emotionally exhausted. I had vomited the whole way back, and it stopped as soon as we landed. Weird. I blame it on my nerves. as I was alone and excited to see my family after being away for the whole summer. When I got home, I went straight to my room to change into my pajamas, and then went to go brush my teeth. I'm pretty tiny for 11, but back then I was even tinier. The mirror in the bathroom was high up and I could only see my forehead, so I wouldn't bother looking into it, and most of the times I would brush my teeth with my eyes closed. This day in particular, I did exactly that, and being so tired made it make more sense. The door of the bathroom had a slight crack, yes, but as I brushed my teeth and was bent over the sink, someone or something playfully blew right into my ear hole. Not my face, not my neck, nothing else around that area. Just my ear hole. I remember the moment it happened. I giggled and crunched my neck up cause it tickled so much. I thought nothing of it, because I figured my mom pushed the door open a bit and blew in my ear. It was not likely, but it would have been the only explanation I had. I quickly spit the water out and opened the door, and across the bathroom was my parents' room C. Blueprint of home in my other post. I said to my mom laughing, "Why'd you blow in my ear?" She was on the far end of her room naked and changing. There was just no way she'd make it there that fast and be doing what she was doing. In the little time that I opened the door and questioned her, she looked at me so confused and said, "What are you talking about?" To which I replied with what I had just felt, and she said she hadn't done that, and that it was probably just a draft from the crack in the door. I'm gonna be honest, I wasn't buying her draft story, and I knew she hadn't done it. I know what I felt. I knew someone was there. I could feel them. That's why I swore it was my mom that had done it. From that point on, I decided to sleep with a pillow over my head so it would cover my ear. The way I would typically sleep was on my back with my head facing left towards the wall that goes to the backyard. So the pillow would be covering my right ear and my left ear was being covered by the bed itself. 2 weeks had passed since the initial blowing in the ear. Side note, this house had an old sewage system that was home to many palmetto bugs, and they would get in the house from time to time, especially during the summer due to the rain. Time was around 5:45 to 6 a.m. I was sleeping with only a t-shirt and in my underwear. My left leg stuck out of my covers at a 70-degree angle, but the covers were right over my groin. I was in a light sleep when I felt a bug crawl from the inner part of my leg, to about 3 inches away from my private part. Once it reached that close, I decided I would just smack it on my body and kill it before it reached my vagina. The moment I slapped myself, which hurt, something blew super hard in my ear. This was not a nice blow. This was a very aggressive, hard blow. And there was no way I could have felt that as the pillow was covering my head. It was impossible. Anyways, at that very moment I froze. Complete shock. I felt my ears ring and I could barely breathe as I felt this horrible pressure on my chest. I was raised Catholic and knew all my prayers like the back of my hand. I went to recite a prayer and I couldn't even think of the first word to one. I had forgotten all of them. It was like forgetting your ABCs. How? I tried to scream for my mother and my mouth would move, but no sound would escape. I knew it wasn't sleep paralysis, because I was digging my nails into my skin where I had slapped my leg due to the intense fear I felt, and I was clenching my toes while thinking to myself if I was dreaming, but at that moment I knew I wasn't. I could feel someone or something to my right, near my torso and head. I could feel their proximity because the air in that area was being blocked. Truly terrifying. I laid there for what felt like an eternity. But 2 minutes was the reality of it. In that moment I tried to catch my breath and quiet my mind as best as I could. But I couldn't help to think about what I felt on my leg. It was the pressure and size of an index finger, but no skin. Couldn't have been a bug, because I didn't feel its individual legs crawling, nor was it underneath my hand when I slapped it. The creepiest part was where the finger was headed, and how gentle and sexual it felt. The moment I was aggressive, it retaliated by blowing really hard in my ear. After calming down, I told myself I would kick and punch anything in my way, and I did exactly that. Ran out of bed with my eyes closed, punching the air. Opened my door and began to frantically pound on my mother's bedroom door that was locked. Of course, when she opened the door, I broke down crying. I was shaking and not able to even get a single word out. She was pretty scared by my reaction and checked my room and then the house. At the time, my little brother was just 8 months old, and she had to leave the house to get him some formula before he'd wake up, and I begged her and held her so hard so she wouldn't leave me alone with the baby in that house. King, horrible day. I will never forget it. Couldn't sleep alone 4 months after that. Peas. The reason I ask, as they were guardian angels, is because my mother went to see some witch lady that said these were angels welcoming me back from my trip to Venezuela. But come on. The first playful blow maybe but that second shit was not it. This last part of my story will include several different instances that happened in the home and one last occurrence that tied my mother and I to that cursed room. The home smelled like something died in it sometimes. It may have been that something actually died in the vents or something, but there was no trace of rodents in the attic. This house just had roaches from time to time because of the sewage system. There was 1 week where we saw an owl in our parking garage, tucked in the corner right by the side entrance to the house. I'm not sure if that was an omen of sorts, but when it saw us, it flew to our neighbor's fence and stared at our house. It left several hours later. Side note, it was unusual to see these owls out like this. They were mostly burrowing owls and would stand outside their holes at most. Closing parenthesis. The same week as the owl, my mother felt someone lay in her bed while she slept. She said it felt like my grandfather's weight in the bed. He was sick and in the hospital in Colombia. She had also had a dream that she was in her old home in Colombia and her father and uncle, who had already passed, were playing chess. And my uncle kept saying, "Just came for a quick game with your dad before we have to go." My mother bought a ticket that morning to Colombia, and my grandfather passed away the next day. The day my grandfather passed was Thanksgiving Day, and I cried so much that I felt sick to my stomach. So I refused to go to our Thanksgiving dinner. I stayed home in bed until my cries put me to sleep. That night, or sometime in the wee hours of the morning, I had a dream with my grandfather. In the dream, I was outside of my house playing double dutch with some friends when a pale yellow 1980 Cadillac Fleetwood random yet specific rolled up on the side of the street, and someone from the inside of the car waved for me to come over. Funny enough, I thought this would be a nightmare because my biggest fear as a child was getting kidnapped. However, the driver of the car was one of my deceased uncles who I've never met. He tipped his head forward as if saying "How do you do?" and then moved his head a bit so I could see the passenger. It was my grandfather. In the dream, my grandfather was already dead, and I remember opening my eyes wide and crying out, "How are you here? I thought you were D." And I broke down crying so hard, and he reached his arm out and laughed. He had such a distinct laugh that I love so much. And he held my hand and said, "Don't cry, I'm right here." I told him I loved him and missed him so much, and he said he loved me too. And that was it. I got to hold his hand one last time, and then I woke. I was not the only family member to have dreamt with him that week. He made sure to say goodbye to most of us. The last thing to have occurred in that home, the year we ended up finally moving, was shared nightmare . In the nightmare, I was in the kitchen, washing dishes, and I saw a small black shadow in my peripheral, and I thought it was a roach. But as I turned to look, I saw a small dark figure measuring almost 2 feet tall. It looked like a small person, but not really, if that makes sense. This shadow dashed into that cursed back room, and I felt like it was laughing, or it found whatever it was doing funny in a malicious, creepy way. As soon as it dashed by me, I jumped so high that I landed on the kitchen sink, and I held on 4D our life so I wouldn't be caught on the floor if that thing came running back out of the room. I remember crying and shouting for my mom before it would end and I'd wake up. This nightmare happened 3 times in a row. That night, every time I would wake up and go back to sleep, it would pop me right back into the beginning. But by the 3rd time I knew what was happening and was actually able to switch up the dream a bit. This time I followed that thing into the back room, and it had burrowed itself under a big pile of papers or trash right in front of the closet in the cursed room. See blueprint. For reference, it was 100% laughing in there. And at that point I ran out of the room and woke up for the last and final time. It was Saturday morning. My mother was at work already and my father and I were having breakfast. I told him about the horrible nightmare and he looked at me strange but said nothing. That was that. A few days later he's back home with sage, Palo Santo and other herbs. My family had always fought a lot in that house, and the weeks leading up to the nightmare, we had even had physical altercations. You could feel the heaviness in the home. Anyways, I questioned my father about all the cleansing supplies, and he said that at the time he didn't want to alarm me, but apparently that same morning I told him about my nightmare. My mom had told him the exact same thing word for word, and that she couldn't get out of it either. He said when I mentioned it over breakfast, the hairs on his neck stood up, and he was so freaked out because he knew that I hadn't spoken to my mother yet. He eventually told my mom the same, and not long after that we moved out of the house. Peace. Word from the neighbors is no one lasts in that house for more than a couple of months. I'll check in sometime soon to see if the house has a permanent owner yet.